Hello there. Have you ordered a platter of poetry? It's me, Sarah. Hi there. I've got a bunch of poetry here. It's gonna be fun. Now you might be wondering what I'm doing, just carrying them like this. We have a few poets here that are really cool, that I like. It turns out that poets really like spring, or at least they all dedicate a sort of spring poem. Renewal is that theme that we're looking for. I don't think they necessarily all speak directly about spring, but they mention spring, or they mention the essence of spring, or the spirit of spring, and that's why I want to read them to you today. So we have poems from Louise Glück, Mary Oliver, Fernando Pessoa, which I just read recently, going to Portugal. I thought it was a great time. One by William Blake, a few by Audre Lorde, Edna St. Vincent Millay, best name ever in the history of the world. Mary Oliver, I already said that, but this was another book. And Alex Dimitrov, one of my favorite contemporary poets. So yeah, let's go on an adventure in this beautiful big park and read some of their poems. The History of Weather by Billy Collins. It is the kind of spring morning, candid sunlight elucidating the air, a flower-ruffling breeze that makes me want to begin a history of weather, a 10-volume elegy for the atmospheres of the past, the envelopes that have moved around the moving globe. It will open by examining the cirrus clouds that are now sweeping over this house into the next date, and every chapter will step backwards in time to illustrate the rain that fell on battlefields and the winds that attended beheadings, coronations. The snow flurries of Victorian London will be surveyed, along with the gales that blew off Renaissance caps. The tornadoes of the Middle Ages will be explicated, and the long, overcast days of the Dark Ages. There will be a section on the frozen nights of antiquity and on the heat that shimmered in the deserts of the Bible. The study will be hailed as ambitious and definitive, for it will cover even the climate before the flood, when showers moistened Eden, and will conclude with the mysteries of the weather before history, when unseen clouds drifted over an unpeopled world, when not a soul lay in any of the earth's meadows gazing up at the passing of enormous faces and animal shapes, his jacket bunched into a pillow, an open book on his chest. This is a poem that I really like from The Wild Iris, which is a collection by Louise Glück. The poem is called The Silver Lily, and these are not lilies, but you know what? Whatever. The Silver Lily by Louise Glück. The nights have grown cool again, like the nights of early spring, and quiet again. Will speech disturb you? We're alone now. We have no reason for silence. Can you see over the garden? The full moon rises. I won't see the next full moon. In spring, when the moon rose, it meant time was endless. Snowdrops opened and closed. The clustered seeds of the maples fell in pale drifts. White over white, the moon rose over the birch tree. And in the crook, where the tree divides, leaves of the first daffodils in moonlight, soft greenish silver. We have come too far toward the end now to fear the end. These nights, I'm no longer even certain I know what the end means. And you, who've been with a man, after the first cries, doesn't joy, like fear, make no sound? This is a poem by Alex Dimitrov called Water. Water. On a Sunday in Paris, a woman is looking for a grave. We arrived at the hour of champagne flutes. We were promised a toast, so we stayed. Philip says you won't call like you're needed, so be a calm person in all my dark clothes. Well, how easy. The curtains part weakly, and the neighbors look unimpressed. What is aging exactly? There are new jobs and people, and someone dies before noon every day. I'm swimming and swimming, in May or an ocean. I don't see the reason, but that's unimportant, you said. Just keep doing it over again until one day you can't. Spring excites us, and we know what it is every time. The minutes in meetings are life's most undistinguished, that's obvious. And what's obvious makes us all fools than fast friends. One more time then. What do you do here? Where are you from? How long are you planning to stay? A friend tells me how when he leaves for a trip, he sets out a glass of water on the counter of his kitchen. The woman's still looking. I watch from a bench and I'm reading a book. She's reading the names, faithfully, with much compromise. I can't tell if it's better than one more French exit today. So why do you do it, I ask him. Playing my own bartender, taking it down, easy, unlike everything else. And there's months when I still hear you tell me, I can't keep anything living, no plants, nothing requiring care. It's the same glass, only the trips differ. Something in us needs water, so we give it to someone else. Fernando! Fernando! So this poem is called When Spring Arrives by Fernando Pessoa from Uncollected Poems. And I'm reading this from this little collection called A Little Larger Than the Entire Universe. It's a Penguins classic, selected poems, edited and translated by Richard Zenith? I don't know. But anyways, Fernando Pessoa is a Portuguese writer, poet, and he's known for having written in heteronyms. That means that he invented kind of people. He invented characters and he wrote under their names, and he invented like whole, he invented whole stories for them where they were born, their personalities. And so all these kind of poet personas have their own sort of point of view of the world and their own writing style. So When Spring Arrives is a poem that is written by his heteronym, page 60, heteronym Alberto Cairo. I don't know if that's how it's pronounced, obviously. I always say that because I am an ignorant and I always have to research these things, and I do not. So, dear Alberto says, when spring arrives, if I'm already dead, the flowers will flower in the same way, and the trees will not be less green than last spring. Reality doesn't need me. It makes me enormously happy to think that my death is of no importance whatsoever. If I knew that I would die tomorrow, and that spring was the day after tomorrow, I would die happy, because spring was the day after tomorrow. If that is its time, why should it come at some other time? I like everything to be real and to be right. And I like it that way because that's how it would be even if I didn't like it. And so if I die now, I'll die happy, because everything is real and everything is right. You can pray in Latin over my coffin if you like. If you like, you can sing and dance in a circle around it. I have no preferences for when I can no longer have preferences. What will be, when it is what it will be when it is. This is called Spring by Edna St. Vincent Millay, which I love. I love that name. To what purpose, April, do you return again? Beauty is not enough. You can no longer quiet me with the redness of little leaves opening stickily. I know what I know. The sun is hot on my neck as I observe the spikes of the crocus. The smell of the earth is good. It is apparent that there is no death. But what does that signify? Not only underground are the brains of men eaten by maggots. Life in itself is nothing. An empty cup, a flight of uncarpeted stairs. It is not enough that yearly, down this hill, April comes like an idiot, babbling and strewing flowers. So this poem by Edna St. Vincent Millay again is called New England Spring 1942. The rush of rain against the glass is louder than my noisy mind crying, alas! The rain shouts, hear me, how I melt the ice that clamps the bent and frozen grass. Winter cannot come twice, even this year. I break it up, I make it water the roots of spring. I am the harsh beginning, poured in torrents down the hills, and dripping from the trees and soaking, later, and when the wind is still, into the roots of flowers, which your eyes, incredulous, soon will suddenly find. Comfort is almost here. The sap goes up the maple. It drips fast from the tapped maple into the tin pail through tubes of hollow elder. The pail's brim. Birds with scarlet throats and yellow bellies sip from the pail's rim. Snow falls thick. It is sifted through cracks about windows and under doors. It is drifted through the hedges into country roads. Cannot last. Winter is past. It is hurling back at us boasts of no avail. But spring is wise, pale and with gentle eyes. One day somewhat she advances, the next, with a flurry of snow into flake-filled skies, retreats before the heat in our eyes and the thing designed by the sick and longing mind in its lonely fancies, the sally which would force her and take her. And spring is kind. Should she come running headlong in a wind-whipped acre of daffodil skirts down the mountain into this dark valley, we would go blind. These three poems that I'm going to read are from Audre Lorde, from her collection Cole, which is one of her most popular collections. And there's three poems in this that for me represent spring, or which are directly related to spring. And the first one is called Spring People. What anger in my hard-won bones, or heritage of water, makes me reject the April and fear to walk upon the earth in spring. At springtime and evening, I recall how we came like new thunder beating the earth, leaving the taste of rain and sunset, all our hungers before us, away from the peace of half-truths and springtime passing unsaid. We came in the touch of fire, came to the sun, lay with the wild earth until spent and knowing. We brought forth our young. Now insolent Aprils bedevil us, earthy conceits, to remind us that all else is forfeit. Only our blood-hungry children remember what face we had, what startling eyes. The next poem is called Anniversary. The bitter tears are stone, but one quick breath remembers love, and the long years you've lain, bride to the thunder, sister to the fallen rain, who ate a bitter fruit to dance with death. We have no right to love now you are dead, who could not hold you here. Our tears water an alien grass. All has been said, and you have walked in silence many years. But April came today. Though spring comes ever even in the empty years since you have slept, it was in April that you chose to sever young love and self. And I remembered, and I wept. This last poem is called Second Spring. We have no passions left to love the spring, who have suffered autumn as we did, alone walking through dominions of a browning laughter, carrying our loneliness, our loving and our pain. How shall we know another spring? For there will come no flower where was fruit before. And we have little use for spring's relentless seeking, who walk the long, unquestioned path, straight into autumn's trailing arms, who saw the summer passions wither into dry leaves to hide our naked tears. Autumn teaches bearing, a new sun will warm our proud and cautious feet. But spring came once, and we have seen the road that led through summer, beautiful and bright as clover on a hill, become a vast appalling wilderness in rain while we stood still, racked on autumn's weeping, binding cold love to us with the corners of her shroud. Okay, branch. Qu'est-ce que je fais? Ok. This is from William Blake's Selected Poems by Penguin Classics in his Songs of Innocence. It's called Spring. Sound the flute, now it's mute. Birds delight, day and night. Nightingale in the dale, lark in sky. Merrily, merrily, merrily to welcome in the year. Little boy, full of joy. Little girl, sweet and small. Cock does crow, so do you. Merry voice, infant noise. Merrily, merrily to welcome in the year. Little lamb, here I am, come and lick my white neck. Let me pull your soft wool, let me kiss your soft face. Merrily, merrily, we welcome in the year. So this poet, Mary Oliver, is, I think, so far my favorite one of all of these poets. She just has such an enchanting way with words. She is a sorceress, let's just face it. I've been reading every month all of her books, and I just can't get enough. I just can't get enough of her. So yeah, so I have here Dreamwork, which is my favorite collection of hers so far. And I have the giant one called Devotions, in which she selected, I think herself, all the poems from her collections that were probably her favorites, probably the ones she deems fit for the ultimate Mary Oliver collection. And there's a few spring poems in here, and there is a spirit of spring, however that spirit manifests itself. So let's start with Dreamwork. Trilliums. Every spring, among the ambiguities of childhood, the hillsides grew white with wild trilliums. I believed in the world. Oh, I wanted to be easy in the peopled kingdoms, to take my place there, but there was none that I could find shaped like me. So I entered through the tender buds. I crossed the cold creek, my backbone and my thin white shoulders unfolding and stretching. From the time of snow melt, when the creek roared and the mud slid and the seeds cracked, I listened to the earth talk, the root wrangle, the arguments of energy, the dreams lying just under the surface, then rising, becoming at the last moment flaring and luminous, the patient parable of every spring and hillside, year after a difficult year. Two kinds of deliverance. One. Last night the geese came back, slanting fast, from the blossom of the rising moon down to the black pond. A muskrat, swimming in the twilight, saw them and hurried to the secret lodges to tell everyone spring had come. And so it had. By morning when I went out, The last of the ice had disappeared. Blackbirds sang on the shores. Every year the geese, returning, do this. I don't know how. 2. The curtains opened and there was an old man in a headdress of feathers, leather leggings and a vest made from the skin of some animal. He danced in a kind of surly rapture, and the trees in the fields far away began to mutter and suck up their long roots. Slowly they advanced until they stood, pressed to the schoolhouse windows. 3. I don't know lots of things, but I know this. Next year, when spring flows over the starting point, I'll think I'm going to drown in the shimmering miles of it, and then 1 or 2 birds will fly me over the threshold. And as for the pain of others, of course it tries to be abstract, but then there flares up, out of a vanished wilderness, like fire still blistering, the wrinkled face of an old Chippewa, smiling, hating us, dancing for his life. The third poem is in this collection, Devotions. Let me check again. It's from Owls and Other Fantasies, and it's called Spring. I love how some of these poets have like several poems with this title Spring. Just like, I'm gonna write 5 spring poems with the title Spring. Anyway, Spring. All day the flicker has anticipated the lust of the season by shouting. He scouts up, tree after tree, and at a certain place begins to cry out. My, in his bag freckled vest, bay body with red trim and sudden chrome underwings, he is dapper. Of course somebody listening nearby hears him. She answers with a sound like hysterical laughter and rushes out into the field where he is poised on an old phone pole, his head swinging, his wings opening and shutting in a kind of butterfly stroke. She can't resist. They touch, they flutter. How lightly, all together, they accept the great task of carrying life forward. In the crown of an oak, they choose a small tree cave, which they enter with sudden quietness and modesty. And for a while, the wind that can be a knife or a hammer subsides. They listen to the thrushes. The sky is blue, or the rain falls with its spills of pearl. Around their wreath of darkness, the leaves of the world unfurl. So this was another episode of Sarah finding reading spots in the wild. That was a difficult one, you know. I just had to walk in the park, spot the spot, wait for the sun. Sometimes it didn't come, but that's okay. That rhymed. So hope you liked it. It was really fun actually to read all these poems. It reminded me when I was a kid, I had to learn poems by heart, and we had to recite them in class. So they were, poems by Rimbaud or Victor Hugo, mostly in French. And it was really, really fun. I think it was the first time that as a kid, I realized that I really liked poetry, and it kind of got lost on me a bit. It was kind of always part of my life, but never as much as this year. And this year I finally kind of got into it, and a lot of these poets I've known before from a long time ago, and a lot of them I've just discovered recently, and I'm really glad I did. Let me know what your favorite spring poem was, which one spoke to you the most, and also if you have more spring poems to recommend, please send away. I would love to read more spring poems, add to the collection, and maybe do another one of these for next spring. All right, let's go. Let's look for other spots to read at in the wild.